Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Effective leadership is critical for success, whether in managing our personal life, business, or communicating with others. Thus, evolving leadership is a natural consequence of our own evolution. Can understanding and using the Enneagram contribute to this evolution? Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you around the world on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. With us this hour to explore the evolutionary potential of the Enneagram is Catherine R. Bell, author of The Awakened Company, Creativity and the Enneagram. Catherine, CEO and founder of The Awakened Company, helps leaders and organizations thrive through executive coaching, team strategy sessions, and webinars. An award-winning entrepreneur and best-selling author, she holds an MBA from Queen's University and is certified in the Enneagram. Catherine also founded the Awakened Project to assist women out of poverty. Her website, awakenedcompany.com. Catherine, thanks for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor and privilege to be with you.
I think we'll have a lot of fun today. There was something in your bio that I wanted to touch into right up front because it perked my interest, and that's you help women out of poverty. How do you do that?
So we founded something called the Awaken Project. And what we do is we partner with organizations to host events. And then the money from these events goes to an organization called Momentum, which helps women out of poverty by providing microcredit. So there's a specific fund called the Awakened Project Fund that if you go to Momentum or go to our website, awakenedcompany.com or awakenedproject.com, you can see where to link. We're going to be hosting an event in the new year where money will be going to help women out of poverty and to start their own business. So in other words, it's teaching women how to fish for themselves versus having somebody else fish for them.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, thank you for doing that most important work. Your bio also says you are certified in the Enneagram. What is the Enneagram?
The Enneagram is a profound personality roadmap for how we can be more present in our lives. So often people speak about, get present. Well, what does that really mean? And what are our lenses in terms of and our defaults in terms of how we relate to presence? So the Enneagram provides 9 specific lenses in terms of our defaults. And it also shows how to get out of those defaults. And we know, Gwilda, that the highest performing leaders are those that are self-aware. So it provides a roadmap for how do we become more self-aware so that we can become empowered as leaders, yet only 10 to 15% of leaders are actually self-aware.
So becoming more self-aware in the leadership of our own life sounds pretty important. Does it help with that?
Incredibly important. Often organizations, we speak of what is an organizational vision. Well, how can we have an organizational vision when most leaders don't even have a personal vision? So how can we lead at the collective level when often we're not leading at the personal level? And from research, we know we have about 60,000 thoughts a day. 85% are repeating, 95% are negative. So how can we all create our own personal vision, our personal aims, which are the micro actions to get to the vision, so that we can empower a better world for all? That's the invitation, but it's taking the pause and looking at who and what are we really? And what is our particular facet to contribute to humanity? I believe everybody has an important contribution to make. However, do we understand ourselves enough?
Well, leadership is interesting because if we can't be effective leaders, we can't be effective parents. If we can't be effective leaders, we can't be effective partners. And you're telling me that what percent of people are self-aware?
10 to 15%, and this is based on a study by Harvard Business Review.
Now we're talking about leaders, not just people in general.
Yes, we're talking about leaders. But I would say the same. And our first leaders are our parents. So how, as a society, if we aren't taught how to lead, then how can we possibly, and often people are promoted into leadership positions and not taught. So at Awaken Company, we help to teach people what is leadership? What does it mean to be a leader? And unfortunately, the majority of people are not self-aware. So this is our invitation to become more self-aware. For everybody listening, one micro thing we can do is to understand what are our gifts, what are our work-ons, and to create a personal vision for ourselves, and then call ourselves forward with that personal vision.
So let's work into the Enneagram again a little bit deeper. You say it provides a lens or what our default settings are. Does that mean our default settings, like being our patterns coming from our woundedness, things we've learned from our parents versus our natural expression? What are those lenses?
Yes, so there's 9 lenses, and let me walk you through the different lenses, because I think it's very, very important to understand what those are so that we can begin to understand our defaults. So the Enneagram 8, the lens the name of the type is called the Challenger. And so these are natural leaders. So their gifts are leadership, vision, strength. However, the invitation, the work on is to get in touch with their vulnerability and their heart. And in so doing, then it opens up the Enneagram. The Enneagram is a way of a portal for opening versus kind of contracting into our type. We're often all walking around contracted in our type. But once we know this wisdom, it's a portal for many other possibilities. So that's the Enneagram 8, the Challenger. And the Enneagram 8, 9, and 1, body types. So body center has to do with our relationship with anger. The next is the 9. The 9 is actually Canada as a country. Peacemakers. So people who want to keep the peace, who see many, many, many different perspectives. Yet we need their voices to come forward right now, because often they keep quiet, or they kind of hum and haw. This could happen, or this could happen. But the invitation with the 9, get in touch with the anger and express yourself. Express yourself instead of always wanting to keep the peace. So 9, the peacemaker. 1 is the reformer. And these are the red penners of the world. These are the people who just want to get it right. And they want to live in integrity with their values and do what's important to them. And these are the people, again, they see everything that can go wrong, not everything that can go wrong, but when they walk into a room, they see everything that's not right. So the invitation with them is just to relax, because there is perfection and imperfection. So 8, 9, and 1, we have the Challenger, the Peacemaker, and the Reformer, body types. Now let's move into the heart. The heart is the 2, 3, 4. And the 2 is the helper. And this is the mother archetype. So these, you go to a party, and these are the people who are always giving out, trying to be helpful. Yet what they need often is to recognize what they need to say no to and what they need for themselves. So this is the helper. Then 3 is the achiever. And the achiever is all about the gold stars. To be successful, I'm going to get this award, get this award, get this award. So that's the 3, the achiever. Then the 4, and interesting, the 4 and the 5, when I did a research study on leadership, less than 6% of the population in terms of leaders had 4 or 5 as dominant. 4 is the individualist, the Alanis Morissette, Johnny Depps of the world, looking for the depths, the creatives, looking for the depths in their world. However, the invitation is for them to ask about the other person, because often they can go so internal that they forget about the other. So 2, 3, 4, the helper, the achiever, and the individualist. Now let's move to the head center. And the head center is 5, 6, 7. 5 are the Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawkings of the world. And I hope everybody's getting a particular flavor or taste for all of these Enneagram types and can somehow relate to them in a certain way. So 5, 6, 5, investigator. These are the people who like to go deep and research things. They tend to be mono-focused. The invitation for them is to get in touch with their feelings. So there was a CEO I was working with, and when you entered his office, all he had was a wall of books because he didn't want any personal contact. So he made a commitment to go for lunch with somebody once a week and ask them one personal question. And that's the invitation for the 5. Then there's the 6, the loyalist. And these people, they're like the scenario planners, the negative scenario planners. And all they see is what can go wrong in the world. And that's their default. So the invitation for them is remember to balance with positive options. And then the 7, the enthusiast, which is the person who sees rainbows and unicorns and everything and loves to brainstorm, however, may not complete a project. So 5, 6, and 7, head center. So I've given you a very, very brief, and of course, this is a very deep tool. So I've just given you like a moosh boosh of what it is that the Enneagram is. It really is a portal for how can we become more present in our lives? How can we become more present as leaders?
So as I listen to you, I see where all these different lenses. If someone has been introspective and worked through some things that stick them in one or the other, they can surf whichever one is expedient at the time. Is that accurate?
That's right. So what people can do is they can go to Awakenly, which is our app, and do a quick test, and it will show you what may be your Enneagram lens. And we also have a number of free YouTube videos. And
Well,
once we understand,
we're going
once
to have to we're going to
once
have to take a bit of a cliffhanger here because it's time to go into a station break. Catherine and I will return very shortly, so don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Is leadership really necessary? With us this hour, discussing leadership, is the author of The Awakened Company, Creativity and the Enneagram, Catherine R. Bell. Catherine, it seems like we're coming into a time when people are becoming more independent. Do you see leadership as something that's really, really necessary this time, or do you think it's starting to slowly become obsolete? Or option number 3.
what a wonderful question. I think true leadership is more needed than ever. And why do I say this? True leadership is about the elevation of the other and the creation of community. And I believe that our society needs leaders who are in touch with their belly, their heart, and their heads, and that elevate everybody. And that leadership right now, what's being asked for is that everybody rise in their own leadership so that we can all lead together. I believe everybody is a leader. We just don't know how to lead. So I would invite everybody to get in touch with your personal aims. And one thing I'd suggest is everyone be familiar with transformational leadership and transformational leadership research. And there's 4 I's everybody must know. Individualized consideration. We must consider people as individuals. Intellectual stimulation. Ask questions. Inspirational motivation. We must inspire with our aim. And the last is idealized influence, which is where we live our values. When we know the 4 I's, we can all lead from a healthy place. And it is about the elevation of ourselves and the elevation of the other into our own potential. It is time for this new leadership too. And it's interesting because all the business research points to this. So are we willing to do it?
So let's go backwards to
Yes.
the project of helping women out of poverty. Are you
Mhm.
using these principles to train them to become leaders rather than victims?
Yes. Well, Momentum, the organization I partner with, absolutely is. They help to teach people the business skills to do so. And every team we work with, it's providing a whole toolkit for how do we actually apply business research to our lives. And everything we do, everything Awakening Company is involved with, our vision is to ignite and sustain the fire within. So it applies to every little thing we do and every little thing we touch, from our webinars to our interactions
So,
crossing somebody in the street.
So, how does the Enneagram directly relate to leadership?
Oh, what a great question. It directly relates to leadership in the sense of self awareness. It provides a roadmap to become more self aware. We're all actors. What script are we using, and how can we undo the script so that we can be more present and say what we're feeling? So, for example, yesterday I was working with an amazing team, and one practice I'd suggest everybody do, and you can do it at the dinner table or the boardroom, is to sit around together and to express gratitude for one another. And this leadership team did this. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house. So, what is it going to take for us, for everybody, to recognize what is the smallest thing we need to do and to actually do it? And in a sense, to provide positive contagion, to provide meaning and belonging to everybody that we're in a field with, because we're not separate. There's an illusion of separateness. Yet every being, every time we go for a walk, are we appreciating it? Are we seeing what's actually here?
Well, it seems like you were speaking of the lenses of the Enneagram. Sorry, I
Yes.
keep leaving out vowels and whatnot. You speak about the lenses. Are those lenses actually simply, well, the name lenses, expressions that we function through, and we can function through those expressions without ever going deeper and knowing who we are?
Yes, the majority of people are asleep, and they're asleep to the patterns in their lives. For example, if we look back at our journals over years, how many patterns have we repeated? How many things, and what is it going to take for us to have the self-awareness to break into a new way of being and doing? And now it's such an exciting time, because I think in great chaos, there's great opportunity. And are we willing for ourselves to look at ourselves, become more self-aware, so that we can become the leaders that we're all meant to be?
Isn't it challenging to let go of one's identifying with one of those lenses? I mean, it seems like most people, that's where they're stuck. And if you're identified with something, doesn't that make you invested in it?
Yes, it does. The challenge is the invitation is, with consciousness, with awareness, we can become more aware of what patterns we want to do, what patterns we don't want to do. But we need that awareness.
So does
Can we see what our patterns are, and what works and what doesn't work, and let go of what doesn't work?
but is letting go really the answer? If the whole world is operating through from these lenses rather than from self for the most part, those that become more self-aware, don't they need to use those as tools then to communicate?
Absolutely. The invitation is to use this as a roadmap. So let's say, for example, I dominantly point 8, which is the challenger. And so when I become more aware of the other vistas through the different Enneagram types, I'm more open. And I have a growth mindset, which is based on Carol Dweck's amazing research of this growth mindset of, what do I need to learn here? What do I need to investigate? What do I need to go through? But without that awareness, those lenses aren't available to me. So it does, exactly to your point, it does provide us with a different tool, different framework for what is needed to be more creative at this time. And I believe everybody has access to creativity, and everybody is creative.
It seems that these lenses, everybody has a little bit of one of them, or a little bit of all of them, really.
Mm,
Um, is there a danger in pigeonholing somebody and missing the rest?
brilliant. Yes, 100% there is. This tool was not meant to pigeonhole people. It was not meant to put people into prisons. It was meant to open up the doors to our perception of who and what we are. Because when we know our dominant default, we know we don't have to be the dominant default. And yet we are invited to consider, when we're in default, well, what serves us? What do we need to learn? And how can we walk through potentially 8 other doors? And I believe we all have Enneagram DNA. And when we know our Enneagram DNA, for example, I know I'm lower on certain scores, I can actively, by presencing, bring those up. So
What do you mean by Enneagram DNA?
Enneagram DNA. So we all have a certain amount of every type within us.
Okay.
So you said very accurately, we all have all 9 points within us, and that is true. And we have one dominant type. So understanding what our dominant type is, and then listing what we think or what we consider our relationship to the other scores. So for me, 9 is quite low, the peacemaker. So how do I bring that up? And that is the invitation when we understand. But first is to understand what our default is. And then we can understand with our teammates, with our kids. It has totally helped me as a parent be a better parent. And to give kudos to my mother, who's a teacher. My mom, who is a teacher, taught me this first. So it just stems everywhere.
So if we're learning the Enneagram and we understand that the risk is of pigeonholing somebody, because people like to feel, okay, I know what makes you work, therefore I'm safe. I know you. And we really don't, do we? Just because we know their major default. How can we better use it than to pigeonhole? How do we use it to work with a person?
Yes, well, first of all, everyone must determine their own Enneagram type. The invitation, we do not type others. We also must recognize that all types exist within the other person, not just the one. So you do not pigeonhole the other person. We must begin the work on ourselves.
So it's like you're saying, I'm not a 9. I'm doing a 9 right now.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and we are not our type. Nobody is their type. However, often we can come from that default, and the invitation is to become conscious and aware of when we are coming from that default. The only person we can change is ourselves. We cannot go and put stickers on other people. No, that's not what the Enneagram is about. The Enneagram is about how do we turn the mirror inwards to the doors inside of ourselves so that we can become more present. And I truly believe if people are alive, we all have things to learn and to develop and to cultivate. And this is a way for us to learn, develop, and cultivate awareness and consciousness in ourselves versus, putting it out on other people.
So if we're becoming more self-aware, mm-hmm. and we're trying to find out where we stand in this Enneagram, how can we relate to the people around us within this new understanding, with knowing that they don't have the understanding yet?
Invite them to understand. Invite them to consider and introduce the Enneagram to them. That's the invitation for in presence. People often speak about being present or being in the now. Well, first we must understand our default to become, and in changing, I often use the metaphor of the water droplet. When we drop in ourselves, when we drop into presence ourselves, so that's the drop in the ocean.
We're going to have to leave another cliffhanger, Catherine. Okay. We'll be right back and continue our discussion. So you stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Are you self-aware? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing being awakened is Catherine Arbell. Her website, awakenedcompany.com. Catherine, we've determined that everybody has all of the Enneagram within. What I'd like to address next is, where does it go? Okay, so do we sustain damage in our life growing up that then has us avoid one expression and take on another?
That's a very profound question. I believe that it is both sociological and biological, are Enneagram points. And I don't have a complete answer to that question. I do believe that our familial patterns affect our Enneagram point and the DNA that I spoke of earlier. And at the same time, having given birth to two boys, they were definitely had certain predispositions. And my mother said, right from the get-go, it was very hard to contain this energy that I just love to lead right from the start. So and I also believe that our situations and what happens to us in our lives does affect our relationship to the different Enneagram points.
There's a lot of talk about epigenetics. Okay.
Mm.
How does epigenetics interface with the Enneagram?
That I do not know. I cannot comment because I don't know enough, and I prefer to comment on what I've researched. So yeah.
A really good approach, really good approach. So by epigenetics, we can turn off and turn on different gene expressions. And I was just wondering if we could also turn off or turn on any Enneagram expressions. So
Great question. With awareness, we can. However, as we've talked about 90% of people are not aware. So we must become aware. What is our Enneagram type, our point, and how do we relate to all the different Enneagram points? And when do we want to open the doors on the different types? That comes with awareness.
if we start to identify more with that awareness, with that self-awareness, with who we really are, does that grant more flexibility to dance the different lenses of the Enneagram?
Yes, it does. It grants more flexibility and more possibility. Possibilities just open up when we are dancing with the different Enneagram points and when we have more self-awareness. But it does require, there's a risk to becoming more open. So the invitation is, and I think that we're all here to live lives that aren't comfortable. Like, we're meant to get out of discomfort so that we can fully experience our humanity. So, and that requires vulnerability, openness, trust. So that is the invitation with all of this work.
It is so easy to just stay stuck in a particular way of being, but then again, the brain atrophies around that eventually, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And it goes on autopilot. And when we've been given certain stickers for certain behaviors, we want to keep on doing those behaviors. Yet there's more meaning and more belonging to ourselves when we go into those places of discomfort, so that we can illuminate different ways and different modes and different patterns so that we can live a more conscious life and be a more conscious leader.
If we're stuck in these patterns, in these individual lenses, how does that impact our ability to communicate with other people?
Well, it most certainly does, from our ability to communicate, from our listening perspective, from the way we use our voices, and the way we communicate with our environments. Most people aren't even aware that our context is always giving us signals for which way to go. So yes, it certainly affects our ability to communicate. And most people rate the worst time of their day as their time with their bosses. So how do we change this dynamic so that our communication is more positive? And we know that most people need have emotional bank accounts, and we need 5 deposits for every one withdrawal. So it's time. It's time for us to see all the amazingness that's happening around us, and to speak it, and to listen, and to see, and to taste, and to smell.
Perception is an amazing part of this, isn't it? If we're stuck in a particular lens, does that limit our perception?
Yes, because we see what we affirm. Whereas if we really are present in our bodies and what we hear, what we see, what we smell, what we taste, what we feel, there's often different answers that are available to us and different questions that arise. And we must love the question, because the question, like your beautiful questions today, they provide a thorough thread for where we are to go next.
If we need to build self-awareness in order to surf the Enneagram expressions, what helps build self-awareness?
What helps build self-awareness is understanding our Enneagram type, understanding what our strengths and weaknesses are, doing 360s, getting other people's feedback on how do I show up? What are my gifts? What are my work-ons? And really listening to that feedback and creating a personal aim. Like often, if we don't have intention, positive intention, we will just go on automatic pilot back to that negative mind that we spoke about earlier.
What brings to mind is the old adage, walk a mile in another person's moccasins, right? So not only, from what I'm hearing you say, not only does being able to become self-aware and working the Enneagram help us become more authentic, but it also gives us the liberty of putting on somebody else's shoes. How can we choose to do that?
First of all, grounding in our bodies and taking a breath with the other person and noticing their amazingness and quieting our minds, truly listening, and then modeling the highest aspect of the other person and seeing their potential.
So it's pretty easy for a lot of us, depending, of course, on our expression in the Enneagram, to see the potential of another person. Can we also avoid being blinded by their patterns so that we're not looking at the potential and being taken out by their patterns?
Well, even the term being taken out by their patterns is an interesting one, because when we are grounded and present in our bodies, we will not be taken out by somebody else's patterns, because we will be present to what is here and what is in the other person that is awake. And then by being present to what is awake in the other, we are awake to it in ourselves, versus going to, in many ways, the Enneagram is like, what are we awake to? What are we asleep to? And by seeing, I don't want what is asleep in me to be asleep in you, for example. And by it being asleep in me, then it creates a pattern in and of itself. So we must be awake to the awareness that is actually between us. And I believe relationships are a whole separate entity. Yeah.
So that would require, again, be here now. The old adage, be here now. You can't read it from anywhere else, can you?
No. And be here now is a very interesting topic, because there's such a thing as the fourth moment in time. What do I mean by that? All of us have memories of the past. We're present. And we also contain the future. So the fourth moment in time contains it all. And I don't think we all want to return to being a baby. No, we have wisdom. So that's by what I mean. It's a Dzogchen teaching of the fourth moment in time is being present with it all. And so be here now, it's really like a diamond. And there's so many facets to this diamond. And can we drop into the moment? And in that moment, then we're informed of so many other moments.
If we are unable to drop into the moment and we're just living through the past or our dreams for the future, we can't be present with anybody else or ourselves, can we?
We cannot. And often people are either operating from way ahead in time or way behind in time. And the invitation is to center ourselves. And the way we center ourselves is through our body, our breath, and sensation. And with leaders, I often work on, okay, what does it feel like in your body? What are your body senses telling you? And that's where it begins. But we're often hijacked into this future or this backwards or sideways. And the invitation is to drop into belly center and to sense our actual limbs, to sense our feet on the floor, to sense our head. And our head center is very important. Like people are like, drop the mind. We need our minds. We need our minds to love questions. We need our minds to drive properly. So we do need these three centers, the body, heart, and head, all online.
Well, we're about to take a break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask you about that fourth center of spirit. Please stay with us as Catherine and I continue to explore creativity, the Enneagram, and leadership. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Are some people leaders while others are followers? Which are you? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Catherine R. Bell. Her website, awakenedcompany.com. Catherine, we'll get on to being a leader or being a follower, but first I want to continue where we left off on the last segment. And that was you talked about being, bringing together the mind, the heart, and the emotions. And I said, well, let's talk about what it means to, where does spirit play in here? Where does energy play in here? So would you continue, please?
Spirit or mind stream is everywhere. And love is everywhere. Love is, spirit is. And the invitation is to drop into ourselves, to actually sense it in our bodies, and to know that it is also our source of great interconnection. That my spirit to your spirit, one and the same applies to everybody. No matter what, this is what I believe, no matter what tradition you're involved in, we all have this awareness and spirit. And can we allow that to shine through?
And
By relaxing.
So does becoming self-aware, being aware of the mind, the heart, and the mind, the body, and the emotions, is that a doorway of sorts to the fourth level of spirit?
Yes, our body is a portal to spirit. And can we relax our bodies enough to sense spirit, to feel it in our hearts? And it requires a brilliant mind to be able to do so as well, an open mind to be able to do so.
It's an amazing interplay, isn't it? So let's go back to the first question that we started out with in this segment. What's the difference between leaders and followers? What makes one versus the other?
Yes. So some business research. Researchers put two groups of people in a room. The first group they called followers. The next group they called leaders. Similar socio-demographic qualifications, i.e., they were similar individuals. Then they mocked an emergency, and those that were labeled followers completely fell apart, whereas those that were labeled leaders rose to the occasion. So my invitation is for everybody to consider themselves as leaders, because in that we rise, versus the labels we stick on ourselves as followers, etc. they have consequences. Our mantra and how we speak and think about ourselves matters. So invitation, I believe everybody's a leader, and it's ours to discover.
So it's a state of mind versus a state of being.
Interesting. It is both. It's a state of mind and a state of being. It's both being and doing. And one of my leadership teachers, Dr. Julian Barling, always said, what is the smallest thing we can do? So I often think about what is the microscopic thing we can do? And that is leadership, and do it from being. So it's the intersection of being and doing. We cannot, we can be from, we can do from being. And can we recognize that? That's the invitation.
So in what ways does self-awareness contribute to our evolution as individuals and as a species?
I believe the more self-aware we are, that will have a positive ripple on our society. So we become more self-aware. The ripples then affect our relationships, our teams, our organizations, and our world. That interconnection, we cannot be separated. And I think that is the invitation of our time, to realize our interconnectedness and to realize how when we fulfill our potential, we're helping everybody else to fulfill their potential. That is the invitation. And are we willing to take a stand for ourselves? And in so doing, we take a stand for other people, and everybody rises and everybody is lifted.
Well, Catherine, it's that time in the show when I get to ask you, what's your mission?
So my mission is to be a healthy, universal muse, radiating love, wisdom, and power in service to humanity and the planet.
That's a pretty big mission. In what ways can the Enneagram contribute to individual and collective evolution?
The Enneagram helps us to become more self-aware. It can also be used as a very, very potent process map. So we can use it in terms of how we create our businesses. We can use it in terms of how we use our creative process. It helps us. It provides a roadmap to be creative and to brainstorm and to question things. So the Enneagram is really a portal to discovery. And isn't that what's more interesting than discovery? To discover ourselves, to discover our relationships, to discover our world, to discover how to be a better team, to discover how to be more creative. That's the invitation that the Enneagram has for us. And are we willing to step in and really look at ourselves so that we can be all that we're meant to be?
The Enneagram obviously is a very powerful tool. However, it is a tool. Do you see a time, if we all keep moving in the right direction, where it'll become obsolete and it'll be automatic to be able to dance these different lenses?
Ooh, I've never been asked this question. So good. Unless we can imagine it, it will never happen. So let's imagine that we're all this present, that it becomes obsolete. And we're a long way from that right now. However, imagination, to see something as possible, then allows it to actually happen. Wouldn't that be amazing?
It absolutely would. And you say we're a long way from it right now, which indeed we are. But boy, things are changing rapidly right now too, aren't they?
They are. It's so exciting. It's so exciting. In many ways, it's petrifying too. Like, it's both sides of the coin. And I would invite everybody to consider, though, what is the smallest thing we can do to be empowered during this time, to take our place during this time, to contribute to our community at this time? That's the invitation. And we can all do small things, from smiling at somebody in the grocery store to saying thank you.
It's amazing what those little things build up real quickly, don't they? So you mentioned glorifying. What does it mean to glorify?
So to glorify means to hold up things, like we've all been taught in our patriarchal society to glorify certain things. And I've been really working at myself. How do I unstick some of the old narratives that don't work? Command and control in businesses. There's a time and a place that we need assertiveness, but we don't need it all the time. So I don't want to glorify old structures. As you were just saying, it's a great time of undoing. And how do we all undo the patterns that we glorify within ourselves so that new and fresh things that serve our society and humanity more can rise?
So again, I have to ask, what do you mean by glorifying?
It means to hold up without great, thank you. To hold up without question is to glorify. To hold
So,
up without question is to glorify. And I think we must question during this time of
so it's
what
like
is
having an idol versus being in process with what we're giving credit to.
exactly. And with the thought of how do people actually live and what is important to how I live and what is the manifestation of glorifying in ourselves so that we can shift that to what it is and who and how we want to really show up versus glorifying, consumerism or glorifying the relentless pursuit of profit. Often I meet with CEOs and they say, can you help me go from zero to $1 billion like you did that other company? That's glorifying money, and that's not what this is about. It's what do we need to pay attention to, and it's meaningful, quality relationships that bring belonging in our world. Like our world, how can we glorify that? How can we raise up that? How can we raise up you belong, I belong, and the elevation of this awareness versus glorifying old systems and old patterns that do not serve people?
Is there a stage in our development where outside leadership becomes obsolete?
I believe will always be interconnected, or I hope we will always be interconnected. And in so doing, what you do affects me and what I do affects you. So I don't think we can ever, I think we must always think from our internal perspectives as well as what our external environment is telling us and our feedback from each other so that we can rise together because we're all almost on a string together. So when one leadership affects another, leaders affects another, and we cannot deny that. In fact, I think we need more of that interconnection, not less. We don't need people alone on the internet playing video games. No, what we need, and I can't tell you, that's why I think we have a mental health epidemic, is because of this, radical aloneness, when what we were craving as a society is our connection with each other.
That interconnectedness really is the ultimate answer, isn't it?
It very much
Well,
so.
unfortunately, Catherine, it's that time. We are out of time. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and also your bold, bold questions. I love them.
Catherine is the author of The Awakened Company, Creativity, and the Enneagram. To find out more about Catherine, where you can find her book and all she has to offer, visit her website, theawakenedcompany.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. But most importantly, please be sure to join me right here next time. This mission will continue, bringing information, resources, and support to our rapidly evolving world.